Right. So this is our number three, and I see I don't have the number three there. This is we're going to be talking about multi-species intelligence, and there's somebody. There we
Oh, that's Vivek. Vivek is from Ecohana. Hi, Vivek. I'm so glad you can make it today.
Hi. Sorry, I kind of jumped in at the last minute. I might be listening more today. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We've just been chatting. We're just getting started now.
we like lurkers. We. So I thought this is one of my favorite readings of all times from Neil deGrasse Tyson, saying that accepting our kinship with all life on Earth is not only solid science. In my view, it's a soaring spiritual experience. So connecting to other animals, other species, is we use our science brains, and then it helps us have something really deep, a deep sense of connection. And so that's sort of what multi-species intelligence is about, which is what we're going to talk about today. It is a kind of social intelligence. We just sort of break it down into species that are humans and then everybody else. So that's what we're doing today. So we are a different mix of people. We're not the same people that have been coming for the last 2 weeks. We always like to promote community. So we'll just go ahead and give this a go. You can write this in the chat. Maybe say hey to the other people. How have you been? Where are you from? That would be really nice to know. And then if you'd like to share, and you can do it in the chat, you could even raise your hand. What species most touches your heart and why? And which would you like to know more about? So, right. So that is, I'm going to get us off of, I'm going to stop the share. So, your name, where are you from? How are you? And what species is in your heart today? And which would you like to know more about? And Gail, why don't you just get the conversation going? I mean, I think we have time for this. You
Yeah,
are, yeah,
well, the species that's always in my heart is my little guy behind me, Dusty. He's a cockatiel. I don't know what's the Latin name, Laura Kim, for cockatiels? Do you know?
uh, Nymphicus something.
Very scientific.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Um,
I think it's Cockatua.
is it?
It's oh,
Okay.
that's the family. The Cockatuidae is the family. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Thank
Close.
you. I should know this, but I don't. And the species in my heart, oh my goodness, so many. So many, 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 many. The one that just popped into my head right now is my favorite parrot, other than the cockatiel, is the hyacinth macaw, which are endangered, and they're blue's my favorite color, so I just think they're gorgeous. So, should I pass it to someone else, or Kim?
That'd be great. And it is Nymphicus and it's hollandaise.
Ah, thank you. I'll pass to Vivek. And you're muted, Vivek.
And you don't have to share. You can just write in the chat.
Oh, hey, I'm Vivek. I'm calling in from, I guess, Central Texas, which some may call either the Blackland Prairie region, bioregion, or the Balcones Escarpment area. I'm trying to think of a species, and I don't have one. I was thinking of waterways. That's kind of been where my mind has been. I've been trying to think about. There was a description of some type of fish in Colorado, and somebody described it as the uncharismatic species, but it's still like, hey, how do we care about those too? So that's kind of what's on my mind.
Nice, nice.
Um, yeah. And I think you had a third question there. Sorry if I missed it.
Uh, uh, which would you like to learn more about? Anybody that is calling to you to find out more?
Mm, I don't have a specific one in mind. I think I want to maybe learn more about how species are just, in a place, and what are the impacts on that place, and the species and their niches that support them. So sorry if I'm having a more generic response today. It's just that's where I am.
That's fine. That's fine. We probably didn't really expect that we were going to And hi, Linda. Oh, look at that. Hello. We weren't really sure we were going to be able to share. So we're still just saying hey. And because there aren't very many of us, we thought we'd just go ahead and hear from each other. So Ron, what species is in your heart today?
I'm kind of working on the Pyura molinae, which is the green cheek parakeets down in South America. I've actually been in, I have 7 of them at this point. I try to keep it at 6, but I had an accident, and and I can't give up my accidents. They're all getting homes. Um, and I've been in touch with a lot of the researchers that are doing some of the research down in South America. There was a couple of Argentinians that are looking at food resources and that kind of thing. They're not on the red part of the red list, the IUCN list for endangered or habitat critical or whatever. But whenever I look at their habitats online, there's lots and lots of farms. So apparently they're kind of like sparrows. They can make do with whatever pops up. In some areas, they're considered a bit of a problem, but I love these little guys. They're wicked smart. I mean, one of them lets the others out of the cage in the morning, and they're always knowing how to get away from me and the whole thing. But they're extra special. So
Nice. I was just heard about a confiscation in California. There were like 40 of them of that
oh
species
really?
was captured where they
I'll
were in
have,
the United States. Yeah. So
I'll have to get on that garage expansion.
we may need a place to go to do that. So,
That's right.
we're just sharing kind of briefly what species is in your heart today, your name, where you're from, and who you'd like to know more about. Linda and Katie, do you guys want to give it a go? You feel like sharing, or you can just write in the chat.
That's an interesting question. When you said that immediately, Laura Kim, I am I'm immediately seeing in my head a variety of marine creatures that are caught in our waste. The fishing nets, the large garbage patch, just it saddens me. Of all the things I could have thought of immediately. Wish that wasn't the image. Then after that, I was thinking of wolves and coyotes and not having any of our garbage infringing on their movement. But anyway, I'm Katie, and I'm here in Des Moines, Iowa, or actually I'm in West Des Moines, Iowa, hanging out with my good friend Linda.
Hi, everybody. I'm Linda Lemons. We were here together talking about stuff for church. So my mind has kind of been on that, and I haven't been thinking about species. So I'm sure some will come to mind as we're here and listening. Good to be with all of you.
Thinking about humans a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also animal.
And then Amanda even wrote it into the chat, thinking about human species. So anybody else want to say anything more in our check-in? Amanda, are you good with that? Or I don't know if you're with Alan or not. There we go. We're going to see a face for a little bit.
Yeah, Alan's going to come catch up with me, but yeah, that's pretty well all I had.
Okay. So human species are in your heart, and we sure as heck want to know more about them, right? What the hey are they doing?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll go back to some slides and talk about multi-species intelligence. We have some videos too. It's kind of didactic, and then we have a couple more chances to experience animals through video and then also through conversation. So just raise your hand, interrupt us. Gail's here to help out, so we can certainly slow down if you have any questions or any comments. So we did the first two we did on emotional and social intelligence, and today we're doing multi-species intelligence. It's how to talk to people and how to have a greater connection to all of life. It's really about connection, and out of that perhaps comes care and compassion and how to be with one another. So when we talk about the poly crisis, which is all these interconnecting crises that we're going through, is we started this course because people wanted to know how to talk to people who were different from them and have different ways of being in the world. And how do we all work together to reduce harm? And also, how do we take care of ourselves? And so for me, I think one part of that is to really know who humans are. And I think we know who we are by knowing who everybody else is, because I'll dare to say it, they are us. They are us. So here's the technical definition of multi-species intelligence. It's just really understanding the other, seeing eye to eye or pseudopod to nose. You know, it's just really connecting with their senses and our senses and what's motivating them. And we do this so that we can take better care of them and ourselves. And again, just some more, you guys can look at this, or I'll send you a PDF. We don't need to spend time on some of the more technical definitions, but it means really paying attention to the lived experience and behavior and desires and interests. And Lori was one of our speakers for the Parrot Crisis conference we had in October. It means trying to take the perspectives of others, studying them in their natural environments. You know, we just don't put a rodent in a cage and call it good. We want to know what they're like in the natural environment. And critical attention to the broader conditions that undermine the well-being. So, you know, how is this animal doing in a degraded forest? Or how is this species doing in our wastewater? You know, what's going on there with all these different animals? And then just the easiest way, or one of the easiest ways to think about it, is what are others feeling and needing? That's what we did with emotional and social intelligence, just that what are others feeling and needing? Translate everything into feelings and need. And often people say, well, how do you know what another species is thinking or feeling? Well, we don't even know what we're thinking and feeling. We've been through this in this course. You know, we just sort of make up things and we just do our best guess. So we do our best guess of what's going on in the subjective experience of other species. And there's ways we can get at that without projecting, you know, what we think a human would be doing or what we would do it. But I want to challenge us. This whole idea of multi-species, maybe we should just throw that out. Just throw that out. Because what is another species? Like I already said, they are us, and here are the many ways that they are us. And it's just a little bit of fun science here to think about. Way back when we had prokaryotic cells that didn't have didn't have an mRNA, they didn't have the mitochondrial DNA, and then one cell ate another cell or engulfed another cell, and all of a sudden we get our complex cells that have mitochondria, and that's when life just exploded. You know, we went from prokaryotic type of cells to eukaryotic cells, and that's where all the plants and animals came from. So we all of us came from two different species. We know that for sure, at least two different species. Okay, and two very different species. And then if we talk about the human species, we call it as a human construct. We say there's the human species, and this is what a human is. Well, as we know more about anthropology, is we know that there is DNA, evidence of DNA of at least 3, if not 4 species of humans in our DNA, not to mention maybe up to 7 hominid species that lived at the same time as Homo sapiens. There was an overlap. And so all kinds of interbreeding. And so what is Homo sapiens sapiens? You know, what is that? I mean, it's more of a web of interchanging relationships. And we certainly, the more we're studying ecology, we're seeing that more in other species as well. And just continue to play with this. We're learning more about the microbiota that's in our skin and in our organs and in our intestines, especially, that there's one cell of a non-virus microorganism for every human cell. So we have all these human cells that came from 2 different species way back when, and there's at least one other, cell from a different kind of species hanging around in our gut or on our skin. So, okay, so there's a 1-to-1. And then if you throw in the viruses that are hanging out with us, there's 10 times as much. So actually, the human cell is in the minority in our body. The human cell is in the minority. And even if we have a human cell, our DNA has various different species have incorporated themselves into our DNA. And about 145 genes have jumped from bacteria and other single-celled organisms that are hanging out in our DNA these days. So, what is the human species? Just kind of throwing out a question there. Who are we in the terms of science? So, one of the things about multi-species intelligence is if we feel comfortable, and again, this is with emotional and social intelligence, do we want to do these practices? Again, don't have to do this at all. But if you want to, one way to get at that is where species might you be challenged to see their, well, we could call it their inherent worth and dignity. We could call it just being curious about them, about who they are and how they are in this world, and what cultural assumptions might be keeping you from connecting to who this other being is. And I'm going to stop the share. We may not have time to do it all talking out loud, but we can put it in the chat. And I think we can have a couple of us talk. Which species do you have trouble, or where do you have the most assumptions? And I'm going to stop the share. And you saw the picture of a cockroach. So where do you struggle to maybe connect with another animal? And we all do this. There's no right or wrong answer. This is all of us all the time. So who might you put up there that you have a bias towards? And anybody want to share or put it in the chat? Yes, Gail.
Well, I want to tell a story. Yeah, I agree with Amanda. Mosquitoes is top of my list. Cockroaches is not far behind them. But I used to not like stinging insects. I still don't particularly like to get stung, but I actually changed my story, and that's about bees. Bees, I used to be afraid of them. I used to not like them. And once they started being endangered and I really started to learn more about them, also their behaviors, I went from like really fearing them to like loving them. It was just a big change. I still don't like wasps. They scare me more, or hornets, but it just goes to show how it's a story that we tell ourselves. But mosquitoes, I just can't get past. I don't know. I actually read somewhere, or maybe you told me, Laura Kim, I don't remember, that if mosquitoes disappeared, we'd all be just fine. So maybe that, I don't know if that's true. But anyway, so yeah, it's interesting that how you can change your own point of view about an animal.
During our cultural ride, anybody else want to share a challenge they have, or a group of beings that doesn't quite merit as high as maybe some other beings in their life?
I admit I just have trouble feeling safe and comfortable around snakes. And I kind of admire them in some ways. I just don't feel comfortable. I want to be out of that space. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I realized something about myself when I was fairly young at the time. I think it was when I bought my first house, and the basement was open to the outside. So when I go downstairs, I never knew what I was going to run into. I think there had been a raccoon living down there for a while. Anyway, one of the things that like to hang out in the basement, and maybe even in houses that are enclosed, are spiders. I also used to have a lot of garter snakes in the yard, and I realized at that time that I was afraid of them, and my response to them I was really uncomfortable with. There was this sense of, how dare you surprise me, so I must kill you. And that became a little bit of its own kind of spiritual journey. Like, really? Because you surprised me, I must smash you? Like, really? So much for being gentle, loving, and kind, right? Like, and their crime was surprise. They were going on about their own business just because I wasn't paying attention. So I've kind of shifted a bit, hopefully, in my view about that and realizing how beneficial both of them are. Still get spiders in the basement. The basement's now enclosed, but sadly, don't have many garter snakes anymore. So I've shifted now from being angry that they had the nerve to surprise me to where are you? And I actually never killed a garter snake, but that thought was there.
The thought was there. It's just something about that going, oh, I need to get beyond mosquitoes or snakes. That sort of that language I've heard a couple of y'all talk about. It's like with emotional and social intelligence, we have these, I'll say them, judgments or categorizations of others and ourselves. They serve life. We have these aversions and judgments because we want to be safe and well. And so the idea is to not blame yourself for those thoughts, to go, oh, look how I am around the tick. Look how I am around the bear. You just go ahead and do that, because it's telling you what's really important to you is, I don't want to be fearful. I do not want to be lunch. I do not want a viral disease. And so these are all really important things, your judgments. So go ahead and wrap your arms around your judgments. And then see if you want to work with them to feel more connected to life, and maybe in that connection to serve life even more. Again, it's always a choice. Anybody else want to share along that line before we move on? I'll share one just to tell you how awful I am. There's that judgment voice. I do really do enjoy mammals. I do. I mean, they're just amazing, but generally not much. I mean, they're great, but as a veterinarian, I mean, I couldn't even really, I didn't even want to go work on any mammals. Their poop smells, they have fat in their bellies, they have diaphragms. They're just kind of not put together as cleanly and wonderfully as a bird is, or a fish. So I always sort of think about that, going, I'm always a little challenged to learn more about mammals and to be with them and that they matter too. So there we go. I admitted it. Okay, so we'll just keep on going. I'm gonna put the chat up. So in case there are any questions, Gail, I'll be able to maybe see it, some of it myself. Okay. All right, so here we are into some more kind of thinking and learning about this. Two ways that humans generally get caught up when we're thinking about other species. And it's two polar ends on a continuum. But if we go too far in either direction, our cultural assumptions can trip us up. And one of them is anthropocentrism, which is just, there's many ways to say this, but it's to say, it's sort of like human exceptionalism. Nobody's like us. We're completely different from everyone else. And we only see experience from the human viewpoint. And so the story that I talk around this, and the world is changing around this. When I went to veterinary school decades ago, there were only 3 scientific articles out on pain management in animals. And I was I was not doing a residency, I was doing a rotation in orthopedic surgery, and a dog came out of a hip surgery, bone surgery, deep pain. And the dog was howling and crying in the cage. And I asked the resident, is there anything we can do? The dog seems like they're in pain coming out of a orthopedic surgery. And the resident said, no, that's just a reaction to the anesthesia. They don't feel pain like we do. And I was never taught how to use pain medication when I went to vet school. Now it's a standard, and there are hundreds and thousands of articles on pain management in animals. So we as humans, we shifted, we changed. We used to think you could do surgery live on human infants too. So we've learned going, oh, they're not like us. They're completely different. Well, that's taking it too far. And then The other end of that is anthropomorphism, as they are exactly like us. And anthropomorphism is okay. They are like us, but we can take it too far without a critical lens. And so, can anyone think about? I don't think we really have time to share, but maybe put it in the chat. Can you think of a ways that we are anthropomorphic, where we say animals are exactly like us? Can anyone think of an instance of this? One that I think of, just to give you an idea, is let's say you have a cat, a domestic cat, and the cat is urinating outside of the litter box, and you're saying, well, that cat is mad at me, right? Why is the cat doing that? Well, maybe the cat has a urinary infection. Maybe it's there's some sense of territory and anxiety, and there's marking going on. It may have nothing to do with you. But if it was a human and they were peeing all over the house, you go, well, what's wrong with you? And so there's an example of anthropomorphism. Eats like a bird, right? Right. All birds have to eat a lot, and they do eat a lot. But it's kind of thinking that they're like us. What is it? Chickadees lose a quarter of their body weight in one night in the winter. So they do eat like birds, right, Ron? Right. Dogs who look guilty, yes. Oh, there's been so many studies on I won't even get into that, but that's a really great topic. What's going on with dog facial expressions? What are they doing? Why do they look guilty? Right. There we go. So you guys are along the line of that. So let me just give you a few more examples. And this did come out of the parrot crisis. So we are going to spend some time talking about birds and other species. One way is to try to get rid of the bias of the past. And it's hard to know where we were wrong before, like the pain medications when I went through veterinary school, because we don't know what we don't know yet. But just as an example, another example is the idea of the reptile brain. You still see it written in common literature, even books today, this idea of the reptile brain. And I've talked to experts in comparative veterinary vertebra anatomy, and they say we just need to get rid of that idea of the reptile brain. The idea was that when reptiles evolved, they just had basal ganglia. So they were something was hot, they moved away from it. And then mammals developed, we have the part of the brain called the amygdala, the limbic system. So it's processing of emotions. And so emotions begin to become motivators into action. And then we put in our cerebral tissue. We get up into the higher mammals where there's cognition, thinking about what they're doing. And then, of course, we have our super intelligent, the forebrain here, our super intelligent species. And so they call this the reptile brain, where you're just knee-jerk reaction. That's just wrong. It may be, brains are very different. They do different tissues and they handle different things. But reptiles had all of the tissues. This is an endocast of a dinosaur brain, and they could do studies. And so they did this on, I don't know, it's Tyrannosaurus Rex, I believe. And so, here we got our basal ganglion here in the middle brain, the forebrain, and some of the cerebrum had all the same tissues or comparative co-evolution tissues that we had, maybe in different proportions, wired differently, but they had emotions, they had subjective experiences. And so we just got that wrong. So we're not supposed to say reptile brain. That's kind of putting down reptiles, saying that they are like this. We did it with birds too. Same thing happened with birds. Here's the human brain right here, and here's the avian brain. Looks really different. It's a smooth cortex. It doesn't look very big here. What's going on? And so we used to call bird brains. Birds weren't very smart. And major paper came out in 2005 and said, listen, this tissue. It's convergent evolution. It's not the same neuronal tissue that we have, but it's very similar. It evolved differently. It's densely innervated, especially in crows and parrots, which means they're really smart. They may have a small brain, but they are really smart. And so since this paper came out is when all of a sudden you saw an explosion of intelligence studies in parrots and in crows. So again, that's another place where we just got that wrong. And I'm just going to take a look at the chat here. Oh, yeah, getting close. I see what you mean about taking pictures of animals, objectifying them, perhaps thinking that they're this way and not considering their behaviors and emotions. That's a nice point. So there's tons out there on all the various kinds of animals, but one of the studies, lots and lots done with parrots, where they're going, oh my gosh, through convergent evolution, which means they develop genes that do what ours do, but they came at it from a different chain of evolution. And so one article says it makes parrots into the humans of the bird world. Huh. So why do we have to call them human? They're just parrots, and they're not even their own species. They're just like ours. So, we're learning more. The science is learning more, but even when science doesn't catch up, we still need to be careful of those two extremes and go, maybe we're making a mistake. One of the mistakes, again, I'm just kind of going through the past, so it helps us understand where we are today. I went to college, I'm kind of dating myself, back in the days when humans were defined as the only ones who used tools. Right? Oh, we got that wrong. Boy, howdy. Because, we just weren't really looking. So here's just, the octopus there and the chimpanzee cleaning a dead companion with the grass tool and cockatoos and crows. Anyone else, anybody watching or paying attention? Other species that are using tools? Anybody want to just mention some in the chat? Acceptations. I don't know what that word means. I'm just going to say that, Vivek. I'm not quite sure.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
could say it. It's something that a species may not have actually needed for survival, but it still developed. And it's still, there's a lot of debate over it, but the example might be humans. Like at some point, we didn't necessarily have spoken language, but somehow after tens of thousands of years or et cetera, it, kind of happened, or some blossoming of that. So
Thank you. Thank you for that word. It's sort of like, did flowers really need to be that red to attract hummingbirds and bees? Maybe it just happened. Maybe it just happened. Did birds really need to be all those brightly different colors to attract a mate and to show they're healthy? Maybe they just like beauty and it just happened. Music as a tool? What do you mean, Gail? Like drumming or something like that they've done?
No, I was saying that that's an expectation, the development of music in humans, because I don't think they've been able to show evolutionary reason for it, but it appears in all people. All people have music. But I talked about, I know it's chimps again, but chimps use sticks to get termites to eat. Do gorillas do things like that too? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the other tests that's out there to show how much other animals are like us is this idea of self-awareness. What is self-awareness? What is consciousness? What is sentience? I mean, all these words are loaded with definitions, but one of the ones is, it used to be that, well, humans are the only ones who are self-aware, that realize that they have a self that is thinking or feeling something. And so they started doing these mirror tests where they would put a mark on an animal and then show them a mirror, and the animal saw the reflection and would try to get the dot off of the face because they knew that was them they were looking at. And so they have passed these are all the animals that have passed a self-awareness test. Well, how do different animals sense? Like dogs aren't on this list. But if you do urine and smell, dogs know who they are. They know who they are, and they know who someone else is. They're aware of their own urine being and belonging to them. And so we have to be really careful with how we test animals and how we do it. I mean, what's a mirror to a rhesus macaque? What's, how do they know? So we need to come into their world. And then I would also challenge us, why do we care if they're self-aware? Does it improve our care for them? Why, especially in a term that is so very hard, even the philosophers argue about what it means. Oh, there's the crow. Yes, Ron, definitely. And let's just keep going back, challenging our assumptions, just because we know we've been wrong so often. And so a flurry of books came out on trees in the last decade about how they communicate with each other in their roots. They share nutrients. The fungal mycelium is a neural network between many species of trees. They're actually a community. They feel, they have pheromones. They warn other trees when a fire is coming. I mean, there's all these things we're learning about trees. And even why draw the line between matter that is alive or is not alive? Where do we draw the line? I mean, what about viruses that are strands of DNA or RNA? Are they not alive? Why does being alive or not being alive matter? Why are we humans putting things into categories? And so this is just a book on just sort of challenging our assumptions and talking about how what we would call inanimate objects and materials actually organize a lot like life does. And maybe we need to think about that. Maybe our waterway is a being. Maybe our stuffed animal has needs and wants, or we project needs and wants on them. So again, just always challenging our assumptions. And there are so many resources out there now. You get on to Google Scholar and you just put in, I don't know, parrots behavior, and you get new articles every month. So people are really watching this stuff. And it's actually a field. It's called cognitive ethology. It's the thinking and emotional lives of animals. What are they thinking and feeling? So this is another way to check your assumptions, is actually do the science and do the studies. So I just want to give you some really, to me, they're really fun examples about what are animals feeling and eating. How can we test this? How do we do this? So here is it's a crayfish, okay? So here's the study, and it's not in their natural environment, so we have to be a little cautious about this. So here is, they're sort of like this cage, right? And part of it is lit, and part of it is dark. Okay. So a crayfish that is not stressed will move into the dark and move into the light. They'll just sort of be curious and they'll move around. But if you stress the crayfish, like put the crayfish in a bag and shake it, and then put the crayfish back into this maze, they will only stay in the dark. They won't move into the light. We could say they're afraid, they're anxious. And so what they did is they took these stressed crayfish and they gave them one of the benzodines, one of the human anti-anxiety drugs. And once they gave it to the crayfish would move back into the light. So we don't know what the crayfish is thinking, but they react like many other species do. If you scare them, they're going to hide. And if you treat them with anti-anxiety drugs, they have the neural components that diminishes that fear and has them go back into the light. We have to make some assumptions there, but it's just going, how do we test for this? How do we do this? And they've done this with a number of different kinds of insects and species and invertebrates. If you give them anti-anxiety meds, they chill. So are they like us? What are they feeling and eating? So do your science, check your cultural assumptions. And then another way to get into the bodies and the minds and the subjective experience of others is to pretend you are them, move like them, get kind of beyond words, beyond the science, just be with them and see what your body senses. It's a great way of learning using our mirror neurons, and we have similar, even down to crayfish and octopus, we have similar neuronal structures. So let's just be with them. So I have a video where I'm going to invite us to just be this pack of chimpanzees. Just be them. You don't have to even think anything. And we'll come back and talk about it. You want to feel in your body, what are they feeling and needing? Or just what are they feeling? So just be with them for a while through this video. It's about a minute. And the video worked just fine. Maybe
You
right.
don't have the cursor there. You have the pointer. So could that be why it's not working?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. This happened the other day too. So I'm gonna stop the share for a minute. It was funny. It was just working. Okay. Okay, we'll go back to share. I got it working. Okay, here we go. So, what are the chimps feeling and needing? What did your body tell you was going on for them?
Hi, this is Katie. What I picked up was curiosity about their environment
Mm-hmm.
and the desire to be and remain safe.
Because they jumped. Something startled them. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. Yep.
Did any of you all jump when they jumped?
Uh-huh. Sure, I did.
I've seen it 100 times, and my stomach still flips. I'm like, oh, there's something to be afraid of. Somebody's afraid. I better take off running. I don't know what's happening here. Because your body knows. So there's an example of if you were them. Of course, chimpanzees are in many ways very similar to us. But again, just what does that look like? And are people saying dogs don't experience pain the way we do? Well, it is different, but to say they don't have pain. And so we use something called the precautionary principle. We don't really know what someone else is experiencing, but if our assumptions will lead to more harm or not connecting with life, let's be cautionary and assume that they probably do feel some anxiety or some pain. Let's just be cautious because we're likely to get it wrong.
Ron put in the chat a little caution also. He thought they were being cautious.
Yeah, weren't they? They really seem to be cautious. Okay, so let's practice a little bit more. Is just kind of practicing what's going on in the subjective experience of another being. So let's start easy. What is this bird feeling?
Angry.
Well, totally angry bird, but I don't really know.
There you go. Excellent multi-species thing. Peeved. Excellent. Okay, there we go. What are these birds feeling? These are European starlings. What are they feeling? You can write it in the chat. A feeling. Yeah, I was kind of going for emotional words, but actually body sensation. is a body state. And so we need to throw that into the mix. It's what the body is experiencing. What else? What might their emotions be?
They might be relieved that if they were feeling kind of itchy or dry or something, that it's a relief
Mhm,
to bathe.
mhm. Uh, Happy. I think that's what a lot of us say is, well, it sure looks like they're having fun. you know, looks like they enjoy it. The way they move their feathers, and so that's what a lot of that's the sort of the often the normal response is they feel happy or pleasurable or relief. And then so Ron is bringing up vigilant, careful. Maybe they're even anxious because their bird baths are a great place for Cooper hawks to come in and eat them, and also they're going to have wet feathers. They don't fly as well afterwards. So maybe they're anxious and afraid. Maybe there's a territorial thing going on. Who gets the water bath? Maybe they're angry. Maybe they have pain because they have mites and they're in the bath water because of the mites. So again, it looks like they're happy. So let's put that on the list, but let's go further. Let's go deeper. Yeah, watching out for kitties. That's right. So one of the multi-species aspects of that is the idea of empathy, and it's really what we've already been talking about. But it's putting yourself in the place of them to go. Well, what are they feeling and needing? And it doesn't mean you have to do anything for them. You may be able to say, yes, the earthworm wants to live and it can feel pain. But maybe when you're in your garden and you kill one or two, you go, well, I have to do this. I have to make choices to harm to live. But we can also say, well, but they probably feel something too. They feel something. One of the reasons why I quit fishing, uh, I moved to Alaska just so I could fish, Ron. I loved fishing. But between the ecological impact and the studies coming out that they feel pain, I said, I have to stop. I just I have to stop. So we want to if you want to, as an exercise, put yourself in their place and see how it might change your behavior. And here's an example of this. And this is a tool you can use because this is in response to the poly crisis. So if we want to work with ourselves and other people on how to have a greater sense of connection and care for other life, is to ask them, do exercises where you ask them to be another species. And this was a study that was done where they asked half of the group to not imagine they were a bird at all. Look at your cell phones or do whatever. And the other half of the group imagined that they were a bird. And they had a bird that was sick. I believe they had oil spill birds. And then they tested the two groups before the 15 minutes, the exercise on their general empathy score, which is across the board for all species, and they tested them afterwards. And the group that imagined they were a sick bird for 15 minutes raised their empathy score just by imagining they were someone else. And they also, in a survey they took afterwards, were more willing to be involved in environmental action. So in other words, connecting and actually spending the time to slow down, check our assumptions, and pretend you are the other animal increases our overall empathy and maybe makes us more likely to want to care for others. And so this is a story I talk along that line. This is one of my colleagues in Honduras. We work with the scarlet macaw in the field. This is a young scarlet macaw bird, about 5 weeks old. And here is Hector, a colleague of mine, a biologist. And when I first started working in Honduras, he would stay back from the nest tree. We bring the bird down so we can see if they're healthy and to ban them. And he wouldn't really be involved. And I just sort of watched that. And one day we're underneath a nest tree and I need some help. I don't have a table or something. And I say, here, Hector, hold the bird. No. Hector, please, just take the bird. No. I handed him the bird anyway. And you can sort of see his smile and my other colleague behind just kind of really looking at this. And ever since that moment or that year, I noticed a change in him. He got re-involved. He engaged when we were in the field. He was looking for projects. And I asked him about it several years later. I said, you changed, Hector. Why did you change? And he said, it was when you handed me that bird. I felt a connection, and it reinvigorated my sense of resilience because I have seen so much lost in Honduras. I've been working here a lot longer than you have, and my heart has been broken. But to be with that bird and to be the bird gave me the more impetus to be able to be involved in their conservation. So again, multi-species empathy has its tool, and that's why we use it in our conservation projects. You always have a stethoscope so people can listen to the heart of the bird. A great way to connect and remember, oh, birds are like us. They have hearts and they have heart rates 4 times, 5 times as fast as ours, but they do have a heart rate. And again, just more practices. Maybe you don't even have to study. We just slow down and say, what's going on for the bird? What's going on for the mammal? What does the macaque say to you? And to invite people into moving like the animals. Multi-species intelligence. This is we take these puppets around to various villages and have them act out baby birds and a tree getting knocked down and getting poached and the mom and dad crying and the poachers, and we have the whole village acted out, and they move with the story. And moving like the animal has the chance to connect to, well, what is the young bird thinking? What are the parents thinking and feeling when they lose an animal? And if we can't take the people out in the field, again, there's just all kinds of educational ways that we can ask people to be with the bird. And we work with many of us came out of the parrot crisis, where we're saying no more birds in cages, no cages big enough, no more trade and selling of parrots. And you can get into some pretty amazing arguments on that. Intellectual saying, well, they suffer, they do this, they do this. Okay, so there's a cognitive component that could help. And just ask people to be the bird. Just be the bird. And let their amygdala, let their emotional sense, let their vertebral neuronal system, because maybe we can connect on the science of what we think is going on for a bird and how they experience harm. And that's what binds us together in these movements, global movements where we're trying to reduce harm in the world. And one way we do that with One Earth, we have birds on the advisory board. Some of them aren't even alive anymore. Again, just to remind us, who else is out there in the room? It isn't all just humans that are part of this project. Who else do we need to be asking? What are they saying? What do they need?
Can I tell you what Dusty is saying right now?
Dusty's saying right now?
Yes, Dusty started making what I call his crying noise. So I turned, there's Dusty, he's on our avian board. I turned around, he saw me look at him. I started making sounds I know he likes, and he started making sounds back to me. I turned back to here, I stopped talking to him, and he starts crying again. I mean, it's so obvious to me he wants attention. He was feeling neglected or lonely. He wanted to have his say. So, it just sometimes seems obvious. It's like there's no other way I could even interpret that behavior. I can't think of an alternative. So I thought you guys would want to hear in live, real time what's going on right here.
Who else is in the room with us? Who else is here? Thank you, Gail. So this idea of having empathy, of having your body have a sense of feeling and knowing what another is feeling and needing has impacts on welfare. And so here was another story. It was done with parrots. It was done with, these are young parrots that still need to be fed by their parents, but the humans are doing it with food through a syringe. And what they did is they had baby parrots, chicks of various species, and they had them be fed, hand fed, they call it, just by the same person all the time. So one person did these 3 parrots, a different person did another 3 parrots. And what they did is they gave the people in the general empathy test, so they could see where people scored on the general empathy test. And then they did various stress tests with the parents to see roughly what their anxiety level was and what their stress was, or what their neophobia might be, that they don't really like new things. And what they found out was a correlation that the people with the lowest empathy had the most stressed baby parents. And I would do some caution. That study has not been repeated. It needs to be done. We need to work out any bugs that are in there. But it points at the idea that other species can pick up on empathy. And we did that with emotional and social intelligence. I said, even if you don't know what you're saying, your body knows and people pick up on it. You don't have to say anything. Maybe if you're in a hospital room and someone is very ill or someone just died, if you're connecting with an intention of being in the space of what another is feeling and needing, being open to their experience and your own, then people pick up on that. And that's a language itself. And apparently, so do other species. So when we're working with wild birds, and all the parrots are wild, they have not been domesticated, we try to be as intentional, move slow, be with them to know what they need. Yes, we need to get them tested and we need to band them, but more importantly still is to connect with them and be with them because we believe that it matters. Scientifically, you could get as fine-tuning empathy as you can. It's called the 5 domains of well-being. It's actually a really complex testing system to know where animals are. We're not gonna do it here, but just to really check in on what their nutrition, their environment, health, behavior, and mental state is. So you can actually give a score and go, what are they feeling and needing? And so here you see just one example of how all the different questions you could ask and develop this. And we developed this in one of our publications with parrots. I just here is a little bit more simple. Just kind of ask, where are they in all of these? And try to get our own biases out as much as we can. So just an encouragement that to be involved with multi-species empathy exercises is to be with them, maybe not taking a picture of them. On our bird walks, we'll have people walk like a bird or move like a butterfly. And just go do that for 15 minutes and see what you learn about what they're feeling and needing. Sort of like in watching the chimpanzee video. And we have a lot of resources on our website. But basically, you're checking in with what are you feeling and needing. Emotional intelligence is really important. Remember, if we don't know what's going on for us, it makes us really hard to be present for others. So what's going on for you? And then go be an animal and say, well, what are they feeling and needing? Make some guesses and then go do your research, get online, do cognitive ethology, check your assumptions, and then think about it, share about it, and then see what it's asking you to do to fine-tune your behavior. Is it any request you would ask of yourself once you learn that fish feel pain, or that birds choose? A recent experiment research study came out, basically saying birds like to fly. Well, duh. But they did it very scientifically in how they were able to measure that they really do. So what's going on for a bird when they can't fly? And what does that mean for you in your relationship with birds and the piece of whether we should have birds in cages or not? And I think this is one of my last slides, and then we'll come back to the group and have a conversation. But just one more piece on this multi-species intelligence is to watch out for statements like humans are the only ones who do blank. I've heard that so many times, and I forget who it was that also told me this, that be very suspicious when someone says humans are the only ones who do blank. Why are they saying that? Why make the comparison? Why make the dividing line? Are they trying to get something done? Are they trying to build up how great humans are because we think we're terrible? Is it human exceptionalism? Why are we asking that or saying that? And often we're just wrong. Maybe it's just a matter of degree. I mean, we can't use pheromones. We don't have, the tens of kinds of pheromones that ants have, so we can't do what ants do either. So ants are the only ones who do this. Why is there a comparison at all? And then the other caution I would have is, so often, not only do we think humans are so great, we go the other way, how awful humans are. And so often I hear that, well, humans are the only ones who do murder. Humans are the only one who kill the planet. And again, just as a caution, be careful about why we're saying that. People are saying that because there's a deeper need underneath. And they want to say that because they don't like the harm that humans are causing and they want us to change. And it could also be just lack of science and knowledge. So, for instance, here are two lists. And here are things that many different species do. And we can put them in various terms, but a whole pile of species do sexual coercion. And, we might use the human worm word, non-consensual sex or rape. A number of species do murder, cannibalism, infanticide, war, ship groups attacking, cheating, lying, subterfuge, robbing, extra pair copulation. We might call it adultery, right? So, and there's others, and I'll give you all a chance to weigh in. And so, just kind of going, well, we're not alone, are we? We're not alone. There's a lot of really hard things going on out there. A lot of hard stuff. And in the same way, is talking about the pro-social things, about all the different ways that you other animals show these same things: cooperation, parent, sharing, teaching. And we have a book that's coming out called Birding for Life. It's really close to coming out. And I talk about maybe we just want to get rid of all these words. They're categories to talk about and to judge other humans and other species. And maybe we just need to be as behaviorally scientific as possible and describe the behavior. And don't say that animals have a sense of justice. Maybe we just need to not say that. We need to be more in the moment with what their actual behavior is and not put them into categories. Again, just throwing out ideas about how we can grow our multi-species intelligence. So that was my last slide. I'm going to get us off share and see if anyone has anything else on that list about, or anything you want to talk about, what the similarities between the great things that humans do and the terrible things we do, and how that is with other animals. And also just anything else you might want to ask or share before we go for the day. I think we lost Linda and Katie. Yes.
Yeah, they left around 2, so maybe they just had to go.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about our time together?
No, definitely appreciate it though. It's a good conversation, presentation.
So after hearing that, are there any animals you want to go work on? Any other species you want to go work on?
All the birds in Bolivia.
It's fun, right? Go pick something that's fun. Don't work on something hard. Well,
That's right.
Animals, right?
Something obvious.
I'm going to do a search on that word, acceptations. I actually have not heard that. I know what you mean by it, but I have not used that word. So I'm curious about examples of that and what people are talking about like that.
What was it? Was it extirpation?
No,
Extirpation?
EXAPTATION. It might get misused. It's more related to like a theory of perhaps around like evolving, say, like speech and things. But it's one theory of thought. It may not be, the real truth. But it's just interesting to think about. When it's the baseline for human species, but then maybe that also happens for other species as well. So and think about the possibilities of that, and also culture. I don't know how much there is around talked around perhaps if cultural evolution is even a thing for the multi-species, but perhaps there's something there too.
It is. Yeah, there's a book we did in the Ecohana Book Club a few years ago called Becoming Wild by Carl Safina. And he talks about culture and the cultural evolution in sperm whales, scarlet macaws, and chimpanzees. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I highly recommend it. And God, I had something else I was going to say and it went right out of my head. Oh well.
I was thinking of an example of acceptations. I don't know if this is along the line. And so fish have an air bladder to control their buoyancy. And so the thought is that when they began to kind of move around on land and come out into the shallows, that became the basis for the future lung. And they used it for actually air exchange instead of for buoyancy. So kind of, I think that's sort of what you're getting at. It's just an accident that it evolved.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. I want to bring up the word speciesism because most people haven't heard that word. And I'm sorry the others have left already, but maybe those who watch this recording too. I read a great book by these two sisters who are African American, and what was it called, Laura Kim? Afroism, or you know which book I mean, right? Yeah, and they talk about how within people there's a hierarchy of, a white, brown, black, male, female, like all these different isms. And at the very bottom, like the worst insult you can say to someone is you're an animal, or it's one of the worst, you're acting like an animal. And so at the very bottom is our animals, and that's speciesism, that where we put humans above all other species. And it's also a part of that whole intersectionality they talk about. And of course, people are very resistant to this word because they're too busy trying to fix it among humans, never mind other species. But even that attitude shows you that it's people first. But as we're seeing in the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis, we cannot put people first all the time, because if we do that, we're destroying ourselves. So it's an interesting concept to just keep in mind and think about it. Oh yeah, there's a link to the book that I was talking about. Excellent book. Even if you're not vegan, I'm not vegan. They are vegan and they come from that angle, but they don't push it. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that word as well.
Any other questions or comments or sharings you'd like to do with each other before we go? Well, it was so good to see all of you all again, and some of the new people we had and some of the people that have already left. The very best of weekends to you, and our last one is next Saturday on ecological and eco-spiritual intelligence. Thank you all, and Gail, always thank you for your help.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.